Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Hello there. This is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We seek to transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Somewhat encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. The same can happen to you. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this podcast with a donation or a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. A shout out to Reverend Quincy Davis, Dr. Lynn Henderson, and Kenneth and Donna McDuffie for their support to this podcast. Check out my encouraging, inspiring, and transforming books. I'm available for speaking engagements, in-person and virtual seminars. So please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Dana S. Diaz, who is a wife, a mother, and author of the best-selling book, Gasping for Air, The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse. Dana has had a lifelong experience with narcissistic abuse, beginning in childhood. But today, she is a proud voice for fellow victims who are unable, afraid, or ashamed to share their stories. I know we're going to have a great interview with Diana, and we are very pleased to have her come and share with us today. So, Diana, would you share with us a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from?
Yes, absolutely. I am actually 90 miles southwest of Chicago. I have cornfields all around me, so it's the perfect setting to write because I don't have some lovely castle in England to escape to for 3 months to write my books. But here I have peace and quiet. I have 2 cats who keep me company and a lovely husband who supports me in my mission. And I also have a 20-year-old son and 2 stepsons that I care for deeply. So life is good, and I am very happy to be here to share my experiences.
Well, thank you so much. And I want you to know how much I appreciate you sharing in this podcast today. You have a very interesting story. I've had a chance to view your profile and to just learn a little bit about you, and very interesting. I must admit, and I don't know where you are in the political spectrum, and I don't even get into that. But you know where we are in this political situation. I look at the word narcissistic and kind of smile and laugh.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so you kind of,
yes.
I think you kind of know where I'm coming from.
I understand.
So so tell me a little bit about what is, because I am curious, I must admit,
Oh, yeah.
what is a narcissistic abuse? What do you go through when you're dealing with that?
Well, narcissistic abuse is abuse from a narcissist. And
Okay.
the problem with narcissistic abuse specifically is that it is an all-encompassing form of abuse. So it can be any or all of physical, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, manipulation, I mean, it could
Okay.
be anything. Whereas like in my childhood, I was physically and verbally abused, but there are so many complicated aspects of narcissistic abuse that victims have to deal with. So, it's overwhelming enough to endure abuse, but to have all these other issues coming at you all at once just makes it that much more complex.
This is really interesting, and it's very timing for me. I'll be very honest with you. It's a timing subject, and it's one that I know listeners of this podcast will be very interested in. So I know you wrote a book and entitled "Gasping for Air." The stranglehold of
Yes.
narcissistic abuse. So, would you tell us why and what made you write the book? I'm assuming that it had a lot to do with what you were going through, and you just decided that you needed to uh, write it down and hopefully
Yes.
share it with somebody else. Am I correct about that?
Absolutely. You
Okay.
are 100% correct. It's a little bit of a long story, but I'll give the short version. So, in
Okay.
my childhood, I was physically and verbally abused by my stepfather, who is the king of all narcissists. And as you keep referring, this is somebody who's very arrogant and outwardly expresses how superior he is to
Mm-hmm.
everybody and all that he has and all this power and control he has over everybody. So it was very hard for me then to go out into the world, feeling inferior and diminished and like nothing. He told me I was unlovable and I was a bother, I was a burden, all these things. So I ended up with unknowingly, falling for another narcissist. I recognized he was just like my stepfather. He felt entitled to certain servitude, let's say. But I was so starved for love that, you know, I was willing to give it a shot. He said he would love me if, and kind of like a dog performing tricks, I had to do these things. But unfortunately, I was in this relationship for 25 years. Towards the end of that 25 years, I became ill. And the reason for my illness, after seeing all these doctors and specialists, that actually took Mayo Clinic to figure out that I had been under so much stress in these abusive circumstances that all the cortisol, which is a stress hormone that had been running through my body, gave me a rare lung disease that is actually common in abuse victims. And the neurologist says what I have is like having COPD and fibromyalgia all at the same time. But it was very limiting and very disabling. And that's where I came up with the title for the book. Because it's like he could kill me without his hands. And unfortunately, I have to say this because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
By the end there, it had gone past abuse into domestic violence. He was very clear. He even told our neighbors he wanted to kill me, and he made attempts. But I'm still standing and I'm okay. And I'm healthier now that I'm out of the situation. And I feel it's really important for people to understand what it looks like from the inside and from the outside. And am I taking a risk? Yes. Can he see me and hear what I'm doing? Yes. And I'm always looking over my shoulder, but there are so many people that are still in circumstances that they can't get out of, and they may not even tell their mother or their aunt or their cousin or their sister or their friends because they're ashamed and they're scared. But during the time that I was ill, unfortunately, I wanted to file for divorce right when the COVID pandemic hit. So we were unfortunately stuck in a house together, unable to separate or be divorced. So I started keeping a journal. It was just a plain old notebook that I was writing down everything that was happening, because I was scared that if something had happened to me during that time, that he would make it out to look like a suicide or an accident. And I wanted to make sure people knew what was going on in the house. So once COVID, the courts reopened and I was able to get a divorce, and unfortunately it became most violent afterwards. But since I've been safe, I thought it was really important to turn that journal and share those experiences through a book and through podcasting and things like this, so that other people know that they're not alone, and that there is hope for a better life after abuse.
Well, I do appreciate you sharing it on your story on this podcast. You know, I am curious about one thing, and that
Sure.
is when you married your husband, you had all you know you experienced this kind of abuse, this narcissistic
Hmm.
abuse from your stepfather. Why would you marry somebody who had those same characteristics? Is that because what we always say, we want somebody who kind of remind us of our male figure in our lives? Talk
That's a
about that a
very,
little bit.
yeah, that's absolutely a very valid point. I think it's very complex, but part of it is that, I was when I was a child and all these things were happening, my mother would kind of turn her head to it, and tell me, oh, well, he's only treating you that way because it's just showing how much he cares about you. So she was basically telling me that the more somebody mistreated you, the more they loved you. I
Mm-hmm.
was taught to actually think that, pain and love were one and the same. I probably wouldn't have known what to do with a nice young man that had asked me out and wanted to date me. It would have probably bored me, to be honest. But the other side of that, not just being ill-equipped going into a relationship, but the words, the verbal abuse, telling me that nobody ever wanted me. I shouldn't have even been born. Nobody's ever going to love me. I knew it was wrong. I was a strong-willed little girl and an even stronger-willed teenager. But when you hear something over and over, I think it's something called the illusory truth. You start to believe it. It's a form
Mm-hmm.
of brainwashing, and it's something, abusers and bullies use. You start to internalize that. So I didn't feel that I was worthy or deserving of better treatment. And so, yes, I think there was something comforting in a very sick sense, unfortunately, of being around somebody who was aloof and dismissive of me, and requiring certain things of me in order to get my treats, which was some affection or some act of love. And I'm thankful that in the course of that relationship, it's unfortunate it took getting sick to realize it, but I'm thankful that I did come to the realization that I'm a human being and that I
Mm-hmm.
deserve unconditional love, that love does not have to come with strings attached, and I don't have to serve somebody
Mm-hmm.
to be, worthy of better treatment. So,
Right.
that's something that is very hard, though, to explain to people that have had better childhoods and went out into the world with some esteem and support. I didn't have that, though. I
Mm-hmm.
was I was very I felt very lonely. My low self-image
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
did not attract anything more than what I got, unfortunately.
You know, that is very interesting, and what you said makes a lot of sense. But tell the listeners of this podcast, because I know they want to know this. Uh, what are some signs that you are in, a uh, relationship with a narcissist, and uh, why do people stay in these kind of relationships? And
Oh,
you may
that's
have
going to
you
be a tougher question.
you.
We'll start with the easy stuff. I could probably come up with a list of 100 things, but and there are supposedly different types of narcissists, and they work in different ways.
Mhm.
But certainly they feel they definitely feel superior to you. So
Okay.
they want to control you. They want to isolate you from your family and friends. So it's going
Okay.
to look like, I don't want to go to your mother's birthday party. I don't want to go to the holiday with your family. We're going to mine. And it
Hmm.
you
Okay.
accommodate and excuse it, but after an amount of time, you're going to find that they have distanced you and your
Hmm.
relationships with people. They're
Hmm.
going to make it difficult, accuse you of cheating if you want to go have dinner with a friend. They're going to fight with you every time
Mm.
you go. So now you're not going to have any friends after some time, right? And then, for me, I want to go to church on Sunday. Well, you love God more than me. You're probably
Mm,
seeing somebody at church. You know, that was the one thing I did not, go
mhm,
back on. I still went to, but they make everything a fight and they make it your fault. So
mm,
you feel responsible for them being angry, or for them punching a hole in the wall, or for them if you're being hit or whatever it is. And why do you stay? Because you're scared. You're scared of that reaction. You're scared of that reaction.
mm.
You know that if you poke the sleeping bear, you might get bit and you might get killed. Unfortunately, some people don't make it out. So, I heard of a study, another doctor told me about this, and I don't remember the exact circumstances in which these animals were kept, but I believe it was dogs that were kept alone in separate cages, under some certain restrictions. And
Mm,
at a certain point, they opened the door
mm,
and the
mm,
dogs were free to walk out, and they
mhm.
didn't walk out.
Oh,
They had
I
become
I
accustomed to
know.
the circumstances that they lived in. So, I went into this relationship thinking this was all I deserved. My mother was telling me this is what love was. Even in my marriage, even though my mother and I didn't have the best relationship, I confided in her, and
Mhm,
her answer to me, well, you married him, you're just going to have to stick it out, and
mm,
if it's suffering, it's suffering. She didn't tell me that I deserved better than that. She didn't tell me it was
mm,
wrong.
mm.
So I had no way of, I had no support in trying to get out anyway.
I do understand, and I hear you well. Sometimes it does take us going through something before we get to the point where we can be strong enough to
Yes.
leave. And I've been through that myself, so I know exactly what you're saying. I was a gambler, messed up, but it took all of that for me to kind of get where I am now. I wish I hadn't gone through it, and I know you wish you hadn't gone through it. But to
Right.
get you where you are now is really something to be thankful for, and to feel blessed.
Yes.
So I
Exactly.
yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. Uh, I do want to kind of uh, look at it from this standpoint. You're in your marriage, uh,
Mhm.
and you know what's going on. You sense everything that's happening to you. You know it's not quite right. So at what point uh, do you know it's time to get out of this thing? You understand what I'm saying?
I do understand.
Okay.
Here's the problem. They say that victims of abuse and domestic violence um, usually make 7 attempts to leave before they finally do.
Mhm.
And during the course of my 25 years with my ex-husband, I had consulted with 7 attorneys. The
Okay.
seventh one was finally the one that I went ahead and filed, and went through with the divorce. But I think it's an important part of the process, because I mean, anybody in any situation, anywhere, we're afraid of the unknown. We're human.
Mhm.
The unknown is a scary thing. We want to know. People go to psychics and mediums to know, so they feel better about choices they're making. And that's fine. But, as somebody who maybe has been financially restricted, maybe they don't have access to the funds with their partner or spouse, or they have 4 babies at home they have to think about, that they know they can't make enough money to provide for, whatever it is. Leaving
Mhm.
somebody, regardless of the abuse, is a very, very scary thing to think about, because it's
Mhm.
not just you, you're affecting other lives, especially if there's children involved.
Mm.
So I think that going to an attorney is one of those things that you're just getting the information. And it's one of my first, pieces of advice that I give to people who say, how did you do it? I say get information.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to make an educated decision, but the unknown won't be unknown
Mm-hmm.
if you know. So you have to go to the attorney and say, what does my life look like? What is going to happen for me when I am not allowed, I can't afford the mortgage for the house we live in, when he's the breadwinner and I'm not, and I have, this kid or these children to take care of. People need to know. But I will also answer to that, with Domestic Violence Awareness Month, that we're in now, that people need to understand there are so many resources out there. Every community has them. You will not go without shelter. You will not go without food. And I know I can speak for me and you and many others. We would give you the shirt off our backs, literally, if it meant you or your babies being clothed. We take care of people. And there are so many people that want to help. So there is a way out if you can safely remove yourself from the situation. Everything else will come together. And you're an example of that. I'm an example of that. I can speak for myself, at least, that I never thought in the 3 short years since I've been out of that situation, I never in a million years thought that my life would be what it is now. And yes, it is 100% a blessing, but I would have never had this life if I wouldn't have left that one in the past.
I love that. That's very powerful. That's
It's a
very,
choice. Yeah.
very, very powerful. I I don't know what to say because that was so powerful. It leaves you almost speechless. But I do understand exactly
Yeah.
where you're coming from. I passed it for 32 years, almost 33, and just before I retired in December of last year, I wanted to start a podcast, and my theory was to continue my ministry by encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming. And so when I guest that comes on, I always want to kind of ask them, something along that line, and I try to get guests who I know can basically talk to that. You are a perfect one, no question about
Oh,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, you're perfect, and because your story is one that obviously will encourage, can inspire, and hopefully transform, a life. So if somebody who is out there and who is going through something, and they could be married to the same kind of person with this, same kind and in this same type of relationship, or it could be something else. It just could be that they are in a situation where they feel it's hopeless, that they are depressed. What would you say to them? From your basic experience, what would you say that would give them some encouraging, something to kind of inspire them and maybe would transform his or her life?
Absolutely. Here's what I'm going to say. I would say 3 years ago, my ex had us move to a small town. I'm a Chicago girl. I'm a city girl. We were living in a small town. I had a degree in journalism and psychology from DePaul University. This man had me scrubbing toilets for work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, because he didn't want to work. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. I was so sick, I could not tear toilet paper off the roll. I could not breathe without an oxygen machine and a backpack on my back, and my back was hurting because of carrying that thing around. This was 3 years ago. I am not scrubbing toilets anymore. I am the author of a best-selling book that was a #1 new release. I have written 2 more books that are coming out next year. I never imagined that was even possible in my life. I am remarried. I wanted love. I have the most gentle, patient, kind, loving husband I could have ever. I couldn't have even dreamed him to life. That is such a tremendous blessing. I have gained weight. I'm healthy. This was 3 short years. But you know what made the difference was I asked myself, when all that nonsense was done, and even when, at the end of it, when I was questioning, should I get a divorce? Should I not? I had spiritual beliefs, in me. I had a son to think about how this would I affect him. But I said, what do I want my life to look like?
Mm.
I wanted love. I wanted to be with a faithful man, not an atheist like I was with. I wanted my son to be in a situation where he could respect, the male role model in his life. And I just wanted more.
Mm.
And I think we all deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we all forget who we are sometimes when we're caught up in all that chaos. So
Mm.
I would say, if I'm not an example, and if you're not an example, just look deep in your heart and say, what do I want my life to look like?
Mm.
And whatever it is, you can have it. You
Mm.
just have to make that choice.
Well said. Well said. Well said. I know listeners will hear you. That's
Good.
comes from the heart. I feel it, and I'm kind of easy to cry now, so don't keep doing that
Oh,
to me. But it's amazing today. Um, Listeners, don't go to place. Please stay around because we're gonna come back and ask a few more questions and get some more good answers from Diana. But first of all, Diana, I want to ask you, for people who may be interested in you, learning more about you, your books, and how can they get this information?
yeah, of course. I would say just go to my website, danasdiaz.com. I'm sure you'll have that in your show notes,
Mm-hmm.
and you can access my Facebook, Instagram, or email me. I love to hear from people, whether you're brave enough to share your story with me and trust me with that, or you just want to say hi or ask a question, or just peek around and see what other podcasts I've been on, or check out my blog. I just want to be that source of information and just a safe place people know they can come to for more.
Beautiful, beautiful. Listeners, please just, if you're going through something today, tomorrow, or in the future, or if you are in it now, this is a good time to check out what Donna has stated and get her book. And I think you will really be blessed by it. Um, Donna, since we are talking about other, and now past you, but we want to help somebody else. Okay. So what can others do? If they think someone they know is in an abusive relationship.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one because it's like I said about that experiment with the dogs, unfortunately, there's nothing you can really say to a
Mm-hmm.
person to get them to leave. So that's going to be useless. I think the most important thing to do is just to offer yourself as a confidant, that if somebody wants to talk,
Mm.
or just even take them for a walk and ask them if everything's okay. Sometimes I remember going to church during those worst times, and there was always a lady behind me that just kind of looked at me in a knowing way, and she would just say, are you okay, or are
Mm.
you
Mm.
safe? And sometimes I would just break down crying and she would hold me, and I
Mm-hmm.
just needed that, because sometimes all you can do is give somebody a hug,
Mm.
and offer to be there for them. But I would say if somebody does come to you and confide anything in you, I ask that you believe them,
Mm-hmm.
that you understand that, even if you're having a hard time seeing, this person that they're talking about as this, awful monster that they're being made out to be, and it's not something that you perceive, just remember that we don't tend towards, I always use the joke of Chucky from the 1980s movies. I'm not trying to date Chucky running around with a butcher knife and a striped shirt and crazy hair. These are people that are in our society, nicely dressed. They're members of our church. They're pillars of our community. They are, as you referenced, in political roles, and we don't always see the people they really are behind that mask. So I just ask that you believe anybody that comes to you. Remember that they are not always safe to talk or to expose the situation. So just be that trusting confidant. Keep an eye out on them, and just make sure that they know that they can come to you when they're ready to make that change.
Wow. Wow. This is just so helpful. So helpful. I can
Good.
just I don't, I'm kind of speechless now, just listening and hearing what you say. Uh, you'd be surprised at folks who are really hurting, and they're going through something, and to just get this, listen to this kind of conversation this morning, or at any time they're riding, or have the moment to just listen to podcasts like this. It can be so meaningful, and I do appreciate it so very much. Are there some mental and physical effects of narcissistic abuse?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the stress can be felt all around. And as I discussed, the stress, caused me all these physical symptoms. And, it was hard for the doctors to really figure out what was wrong with me, because it was everything from blurred vision to my hands would go numb.
Mm,
I had digestive issues, a lot of headaches and migraines and stomach aches, even when I was a child being abused. My entire childhood, I remember at summer camp and at school, I always had headaches and stomach aches. But it can affect stiffness. It causes inflammation and makes your body stiff, and it just wreaks havoc. It causes neurological issues. I've had cardiovascular problems as a result. Obviously it affects my lungs, and mentally, I think those are obvious. It causes you to be very anxious. It causes depression. You become hyper vigilant, because
mm,
every time you see this person or walk into the room and they're there, you have to kind of survey the situation and determine,
mm,
are they a threat to me right now? Are they going to be physical? Are they going to yell at me? Are they going to are they going to,
mhm,
have an angry outburst in front of the children? You have to always be on guard, and kind of know what to expect. And you do learn them. And then but in learning them, they're manipulating you, because you learn what upsets them and what doesn't upset them. So
mm.
you avoid the things that upset them and tend towards the things, and it could be that they
Uh,
don't like onions in their pot roast. And you're like, I'm never going to put onions in the pot roast again after the way they reacted so unreasonably or sometimes violently. It sounds silly, but I couldn't buy root beer or fruit punch. I couldn't buy those and have those in the house. I mean,
mm,
it's stupid things.
mm.
So you learn to manage, but in learning to manage the peace, you are also being manipulated and controlled.
Oh boy, I know what someone must be going through right now. Then, so I'll leave.
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
leave. And
it's
look, I'll leave it right there.
ridiculous. Yeah.
I'll leave it right there. Oh gee, oh boy, this is. I don't. I'm just all. I am. I am to a point right now that I'm just kind of wow. That's all I can say is wow. Now that I know you can really answer this. This is my last question because you are there now. So let us know uh, what is the healing process looking like for someone
It's a
who,
lot.
okay, who is able to get out
Yeah.
of this kind of abusive relationship. talk to us just a little bit.
Yeah,
That's my last
absolutely.
question.
I mean, that's a big one because healing is different for everybody. I mean, I
Okay.
endured over 40 years of
Mm,
abuse and I thought it would take, I don't think the healing ever stops, but
mm-hmm,
I think it gets better. And I think what healing really is, I think people think you're going to have your fairy godmother is going to sprinkle magic dust on you and you're going to wake up and everything's just going to be better one day. And that's not how it works. I think that healing works in one, accepting what happened to you, acknowledging it, and then understanding that what people did to you um, was their way of burdening you with the things that they couldn't confront about themselves. And once you release that energy, and come to those terms, you can begin to forgive yourself. And I think
mm,
that's where the healing starts. But, when you've been abused, again, there's that hypervigilance. You are distrusting and
mm-hmm,
it could be a sound, something you see, a song, a place, little things remind you and kind of they call them triggers, take you back to something awful that happened or that consistently caused you
mm-hmm.
um some pain in some way.
Wow.
So I think it's really important to just work your way. Some people respond very well to traditional talk therapy. There's
Mm-hmm,
art therapy, writing therapy worked for me because I'm a writer.
mm-hmm,
There's music, there's so many ways, but I think that, at the risk of sounding so idealistic, in the end, really love and
mm-hmm,
kindness, simple things you can give to people, those are the things that are going to heal them. I know for me, I had my husband that I'm married to now, this amazing man, was a longtime friend, and
mm-hmm,
people said, "Oh, it's too soon. You should take time." And
mm-hmm.
I think it's different for everybody, but
Yeah.
having him speak positively to me every day and being there and not abandoning me even when I was really low and it was really bad, I needed that love and support
Mm-hmm,
to be able to get through and to keep fighting to move forward and put one foot in front of the other every day. So healing is about love. It's just about accepting love, loving yourself, and accepting the love that others want to give you.
mm-hmm.
So I encourage everybody, back to what can people do? Just be kind. Just be
Okay.
kind and loving
Okay.
towards others,
All right. Okay. Diana, what an awesome story. What an awesome sharing today. And there you have it. Dana S. Diaz sharing with us. And I just want to say that her heart is helping others, other victims, know that they
Yes.
are not alone and helping them to understand their own circumstances. What a powerful story. And I want to say to Dinah, thanks so very much for sharing today.
Thank you very much.
And there you have it. And until next time, peace and blessings to each of you.